So welcome to today's class. We're going to be talking about habit change. And so creating good habits that last are so important when we think about creating wellness and when we think about setting goals for the new year. We also want to go ahead and tell you about some exciting things that the Wellness and Work Life group have for you this semester. And so Wellbama is going to start their screenings back on March the 4th, which is really, really exciting. We've got the Crimson Couch to 5K and 10K coming up, along with a training program. So there's lots of great information about that on the wellness.ua.edu site. And then we also have the Move Spring Challenge, an app that you can participate in all year long, but particularly we have a couple of great challenges that you might want to participate in. So one with the American Heart Month, and we would love for you to reach out if you have any questions about any of these programs, but definitely check us out on our wellness.ua.edu site and all of our social medias, which I'm going to share at the very end of this presentation. So when we think about habit change, sometimes we think about just doing a task, just a simple, straightforward task and, setting those goals, moving to the next thing. That's what we think about goal setting and habit change. But I really want us to focus on mindset today. So this quote by Mahatma Gandhi, when we think about your beliefs becoming your thoughts becoming your words becoming your actions, and your actions becoming your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. So when we think about habits, I want you to think about really living with intention and making changes in your life on a day-to-day basis that are going to create the life that you want. And so that really starts with self-belief, and it starts with your mindset. So my name is Abby Horton, and I'm a licensed and registered RN. I have a master's degree in nursing, and I am a certified health and life coach. I'm also a Wellbama ambassador and a wellness class educator for UA. So another good quote that we can think about as we move through the presentation is thinking about our habits as being actions. And so we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. And so our actions, our beliefs, our thoughts, our feelings are all creating our life. And so if we can start to get control of those things, then we can start to really see our habit change improve. And so I want you to think about some of those things as we move through the presentation. A couple of good books that I recommend reading if you're interested in habit change is Atomic Habits by James Clear, and then The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And The Power of Habit was actually written before Atomic Habits. James Clear read the work of Charles Duhigg and then built upon that. And so I think you could read these in either order, but you definitely are going to get great information from both and different perspectives. So similar, goals and similar tips and things like that. But James Clear definitely goes more into the mindset and the habit change that you have to do to start to see progress toward these goals that you might be wanting to set this year. So when we think about the power of habit, people often really understand that much of our lives are our habits. And so a new study with Duke University said that 40 to 45% of people's daily actions are actually habits or unconscious decisions. And so it's really common for us to drive to work, or especially to drive home, and really not remember our drive, right? And it's because we get into this automated state where we are, we're able to drive a car, we're able to, do certain tasks, but we're really not completely engaged. We're not completely, kind of aware of the choices that we're making. When we get up and we brush our teeth in the morning, or we take our vitamins and supplements, those are all habits that we formed. And some of those habits are built in childhood. And so the more, good habits that we can form early on, the more likely those habits are to stick or to last. But it doesn't mean that we can't start to build new and good habits. And so it just means that the habits that we've had, whether they're helpful or whether they're not so helpful, the ones that we've had for a long time are going to be there. They're going to kind of be our default. So if your default is that you always brush your teeth in the morning, even if you are running late to get to work, you're probably still going to stop to brush your teeth. But if you haven't formed the good habit of exercising or taking supplements or, filling up your water bottle before you leave and you're running late, you're less likely to go and do those things because it's just not built into your everyday schedule. You don't have that structure yet. And so that's what we're going to focus on today, whether the goals and the habit changes that you're wanting to make are around wellness or weight loss or fitness, or whether it's about something else, maybe it's work or, life related, family related. All of these principles will really apply. But a lot of the examples I'm going to use are going to be around fitness and around, wellness and that sort of thing, because it's just an easy example to give you. But definitely know that these strategies that we're going to talk about today can be applied in many aspects of our lives, and we should do that. So when we think about habit change, we think about that really being the foundation of health and wellness. And we know that changing our habits, if we haven't been successful with meeting our goals, is really necessary to achieve the goals and milestones that we're setting for ourselves. And we're at the beginning of a new year, but I want to remind you that there's nothing magical about January 1st. And so Laura Casey is a well-known speaker and author, and she does a lot of work around mindset and habit change. And she constantly tells her community there's nothing magical about January 1st. And it's just a good reminder, because we often think that if we haven't been perfect with a goal or we haven't been perfect with a habit, that then we just are going to have to wait till next year to start over. Or, less dramatically, well, this weekend didn't go well, so I'm going to start again on Monday. Or January didn't go well, so I'm going to start again in February, etc. But really, I wanted to invite you that instead of thinking about your goals and habits in that way, think about just making the next right decision. So if your, goal for your, month of February is to eat, better, to eat healthier, right? And you had a hamburger today at lunch and fries and a Coke or something like that. And, you would be kind of tempted in the past to say, okay, well, I'll just do better next week, or I'll do better tomorrow. Whatever that is, like, we always make it into the future. We're going to make those changes. What I would invite you to do is to start recognizing when you kind of tell yourself that, what your internal dialogue is around those things, and just to say, you know what, the next time I eat, I'm just going to make a better choice for me. So don't make it tomorrow. Don't make it, next week. Don't make it next month or next year, but really make it the next decision. So if you didn't sleep well tonight and, you're wanting to, really cultivate good sleep habits, right? Good sleep hygiene. So maybe tonight you don't sleep well. So tomorrow you're going to say, I'm going to do some things differently today so that I can sleep better tonight, hopefully, right? Set yourself up for success. And so that goes in line with this next point, which is habit changes based on discipline and not motivation. So a question that I get a lot is, how do I stay motivated, or how do I get motivated? And motivation is so fleeting and so fickle, right? It's based on how well we ate, how well we slept. It's based on, so many things that we can't even really pinpoint, our mood, just how things are, progressing throughout our day, if we had any stressors. Motivation is just very, very difficult to get a handle on. But discipline isn't as much of a mystery. Discipline is really the belief in yourself that you trust yourself to do what you say you're going to do, and it's building in and structuring in those daily habits that are going to lead to your success. So we often think that we want to have this big goal, and maybe your big goal is to lose, 50 pounds this year. Well, you've got to kind of break that goal down and decide, okay, why do I want to lose 50 pounds? You've got to know the why behind the why. Why do I think it's important to lose 50 pounds? And it might be because you want to be healthier, or it might be because you want to have more energy to play with your kids, or it might be that you want to fit into your favorite pair of blue jeans or something like that. So think about why you want to do that, and think about setting an intention for your year or for your goal, and say, okay, this is what I want to achieve and this is why. And then I want you to take it a step further and really think about, what is it that I'm trying to achieve? What do I want to feel like? What emotion do I want to experience when I reach that goal? And for a lot of us, we're chasing a feeling or an emotion more so than we're chasing the goals that we're setting. So if you're going to feel accomplished, or you're going to feel, you know, worthy, or you're going to feel like you have a lot of self-esteem when you get to that 50-pound weight loss, then really the weight loss is just kind of your vehicle to getting to that state where you feel really proud of yourself and you feel like you've really accomplished your goals. And so when you reach that goal of the weight loss, you may or may not reach that feeling or emotion that you're trying to chase. And so that's why it's so important that we understand what we're kind of motivated to do, so that we can develop those good healthy habits and that discipline to actually achieve those things. And the more that you start kind of connecting with the emotion that you're after, that happiness, that feeling of accomplishment, that, feeling of success or freedom or whatever it is, the more you connect to that on the journey to your goal, the more likely you are to stay disciplined and even a little bit motivated to reach the goal. And you'll see more progress if you can work on that mindset and that emotional aspect of the goal setting as you kind of make that progress. So it's not just about calories in and calories out and moving your body, but that's important. It's also about what frame of mind you're in, and how positive you're staying on that journey as well. So when we think about the power of habit, Charles Duhigg said that it's the habit of a cue plus a routine plus a reward develops what we know to be as a habit. And so we're going to break that down. So that equation can be considered a habit loop. And so the habit loop is set off by a cue. So it's after lunch. So for many of you, you've already had lunch, or maybe you're eating lunch now. So thanks if you're spending your lunch break with us. So maybe you felt kind of that rumbling, sensation in your stomach, and you felt hungry. That's your cue that you are hungry and you're ready to eat. And so that's the trigger that tells your brain that you need to go into that automatic mode. Okay, you start running down your list. Did I bring lunch today? Do I have a snack? Do I have time to run out and get something? And then there's the routine that takes place. Like once you've made that decision, you have the routine of where you go and eat lunch as the example. So you might be driving off campus to go get your lunch, and your car ends up in your favorite, fast food, restaurant lane. And so without even thinking about it, sometimes we end up in the drive-through lane and we didn't really even remember deciding that that's what we were going to do today. And then we recognize that that routine can be either physical, mental, or emotional. So there's that behavior aspect, and sometimes it's all three, right? Particularly around food, it usually is physical, mental, and emotional. And then there's a reward. So once you go through your favorite fast food, drive-through, the reward is that you get that Coke or that, sandwich or hamburger or whatever it is for you. The reward is in eating that food. And then you really do have this, release, a mental, emotional, and physical release from eating, because you're meeting those needs by having some lunch. And so that is a habit loop, just in, the bare bones of what we're talking about today. So this is a great graphic to show that this cycle for habit change really is a loop that you're continuously on. And so you're continually getting a cue that triggers your brain that we need to do something, that we need to respond. And then you go into your routine, which is what we think about being a habit. And then we get into that reward. And at the center of this habit loop, there's a craving. And so, if you this afternoon around 3 o'clock have a craving for coffee or for a carb or, something sweet, at 3 o'clock, if you just ate lunch, it may not be that you're actually hungry. It's probably that you're either really thirsty, you have some dehydration going on, Or it could be that you're in the habit that every afternoon around 3 that you take a break and you usually get a cup of coffee, or you usually get, a snack, something that's high in sugar. And that's pretty typical for us to do at 3 o'clock. It's something that we are in a routine with. So when you think about having this craving, you have to decide if the craving is mental, emotional, or physical, because that's going to be a really good way to determine how you respond to that craving. So we're going to talk about that in the upcoming slides about common habit loops and how you can rewire that loop for you to be the most successful with your goals. So this routine of, having a cue, maybe your blood sugar drops around 3 and you get low energy and you maybe start to feel overwhelmed, then that routine might be that you go and grab a donut or a coffee in your building, or maybe you go out and, do a Starbucks run or something like that. And so then your reward is that you have an increase in your blood sugar and you get some good caffeine on board, and then you actually get a break. So Lynn says she's thinking about coffee right now. Yeah, I'm a coffee fan. That's why I included this one. I'm definitely in that coffee club. And then, you can continue on that loop, right? So if we feel overwhelmed or we feel like we have a drop in our blood sugar or a drop in our energy, then we're like, oh, a donut and coffee would sound good. Let's go do that. Even better if you do it with a friend in non-COVID times, or, you go off campus to do it and get out of your office for a minute. That's even more of a reward. And then, that blood sugar comes back up and you get more caffeine and you take a break. And then you can kind of crash if you continue on that cycle. The reason that this typically happens around 3 o'clock, other than the fact that we work shift work sometimes without even realizing it, so many shifts change at 3. We spent our K through 12 years, finishing up school at 3. So many things, start to change at 3 o'clock without us even thinking about it. But also, your body typically has a drop in your hormonal cascade in terms of, cortisol and different hormones like that can really decrease at that time. And so it's kind of a natural break in your hormonal routine, and you start to make some shifts because your body's preparing for the next phase of the day. And so that is another reason why you sometimes get sleepy and experience this drop in energy or blood sugar. That's why some cultures actually have a built-in nap in the afternoon around this time, because it's just kind of part of your body's natural cycle. But we tend to override that in our culture, and so we override it through coffee and caffeine and carbs. And so definitely take note of when your energy starts to drop, and you might see the same, pattern for yourselves. Again, this other routine, it doesn't have the donut, but it's still your energy drops, so you get some coffee, and then the reward is that you get some caffeine on board and you have a boost in energy. And so I've linked some sources here. We're going to share this information with you after the presentation, and so you definitely can have access to these notes and some other resources I'm going to share. But these are just a few of the common ones. You could insert so many other examples here, but just sharing that to illustrate the point. So a healthier habit loop that you could get into is if you start to feel overwhelmed, or if you start to feel like you have a drop in energy, or you're starting to feel really tired. Then one thing that you could do is that you could get up, you could stretch at your desk. There are so many wonderful stretches that you can do at a desk, seated or standing. You can go chat with a coworker. You could go get some water. You could go outside and take, a lap around your building, or if you're near the quad, or green space, a lap around that. And really the reward then becomes the break, right? It becomes you getting up and moving out of your space and getting some interaction, either interaction in the form of you're outside and you're in nature, or interaction in terms of, seeing another human and getting some of that interaction. Those are all great ways to start to break the unhealthier habit loops and start to really form good habits. But it's always important to remember that, when we say to go cold turkey on things, we usually don't really work well that way. Humans aren't really designed to love that. We don't like subtraction. We like to add things to our lives. And so if you can add in some good things, then eventually it's going to crowd out the not so good things, and you won't feel like that you're giving something up, because we don't like that feeling of deprivation usually. So that's a good tip for how do you start to create a healthier habit loop. So if you have a piece of paper, you can kind of jot down, what time of day do I get kind of that cue or trigger that I need something that's not as healthy for me? And then write down what your routine is, because I bet you probably have a routine and you may even be aware of it. And then write down what reward you're getting out of it. This could be about even, something like habits that you have at home. If you're constantly losing your keys, or you're constantly having to find something in your home, even though that's a stressful thing, there is a reward sometimes that we build into that. The reward is the relief of, oh, I found my keys. That's so great. So sometimes we self-sabotage because we don't realize we're getting rewards for some of our not so healthy behaviors. So there's definitely non-food applications to this. So then what do we do to form good habits once we get out of that negative or not so healthy habit loop? We can start to do something called habit stacking. So most of us probably have an ingrained habit to brush our teeth in the morning. And so some of us might be, more diligent brushers. Some of us might brush more than once a day, but probably most of us brush at least in the morning before we leave to go, about our day. So what you want to do is you want to take an established habit, and for example, brushing your teeth. If you want to start a new habit of taking supplements, then instead of putting your supplements in the kitchen or on your nightstand, or maybe you have them stored, in another part of your home, put your supplements and your vitamins next to your toothbrush and your toothpaste. And when you get up in the morning, brush your teeth and then immediately take your supplements and your vitamins. You might want to leave a cup in the, bathroom with you so that you don't have to leave the space. Everything you need is right there. And eventually, your habit of taking supplements is going to be as ingrained as your habit of brushing your teeth. You wouldn't think about leaving home without brushing your teeth. And pretty soon, you're going to get to the point where you wouldn't think about leaving home without taking your supplements. And I know this is true because this is what I did. I felt like at a certain point in my life, I needed new habits. And I really started to look at my life and think, okay, what is so good, what is something that is just so ingrained and so good for me that I do it without even thinking. And honestly, the only thing I could think of was that I, was really diligent about brushing my teeth. And I started to feel really, kind of upset by that and think, okay, certainly there's more than brushing my teeth that I'm doing here. Certainly there's more good in my routine than just that one thing. And I really, when I started to think about it, it's one of the only things that I would do even if I were late to work. And so rather than getting discouraged by that in the moment, I just realized the importance of identifying that habit and being thankful that I had at least one good established habit, and then starting to put those other things that I wanted to do with that. So I started with needing to take my supplements. I wanted to take supplements. I would buy supplements. At one point looked like we were running our own supplement store at home because I didn't take them. I just purchased them. And I decided, okay, if I'm going to buy these, I have to use them. So I made a rule. I'm not going to buy any more supplements until I take the ones that I have. And I'm going to make sure that I am setting myself up for success by stacking these two habits together. And then eventually I started to add in other habits. So I brushed my teeth, I took my supplements, and then I filled my water bottle. And it went on from there. And that's how I really approached building a really great routine that set me up for success, because many of my goals in the last few years have been around health and wellness. And so this works for anything, but this is just a good example. So after blank, I will blank. So after I brush my teeth, I will take my supplements. After I walk my dog, I will exercise. after I finish work, I will cook a healthy meal. So it works for anything that you want to plug in there. So here are some other examples. After I turn on the shower while you're waiting on the water to get warm, maybe you're going to do 10 squats or, 10 jumping jacks. When you wake up, you're going to journal in your gratitude, make a gratitude list. If you are getting in your car, maybe you're going to say, I will meditate for 3 minutes. When I drink coffee, make it a goal that you're going to refill your water bottle. So have that coffee, but then go and fill up your water bottle and start to drink on it after you finish your coffee. When you walk into work, try to take the stairs. When you sit down for lunch or dinner, try to take a few deep cleansing breaths, because that really helps set our digestion up for success. So many times we're eating on the go, or we're eating in the car, or we're eating at our desk really quickly while we're trying to multitask. And our bodies really like it when we pause and do one or two things versus trying to multitask. And our digestion definitely appreciates when we sit down and have a dedicated meal time versus trying to do that while doing lots of other things. And so these are some really good foundational habits that you can start that will really help reset some of the things that you're wanting to work on this year. So a quote from James Clear's book is, all big things come from small beginnings. And so this is just the notion of taking baby steps. Laura Casey, I referenced her with the, there's nothing magical about January 1st. She also, says a lot that small progress is still progress. And so many times we like to see, these big transformational moments, right? We like to have, the Instagram worthy or the, Facebook worthy posts that celebrate our successes. But really, the lasting change that we're wanting to create comes on a day-to-day basis, taking really small steps towards our goals. So when you have a long-term goal, and most of all of the goals that we're taught to set, all of the resolutions that we have, those are really big, at least 1-year goals. And we expect to make a lot of progress on them in a short amount of time. And a lot of times we get discouraged if by the end of January we haven't made much progress. But we're really judging our progress based on, a month's worth of work versus what would probably take a year for most people. Losing 50 pounds is not going to happen in a month. And if it does, it's probably not sustainable. It's probably not the healthiest way to get there. So when you think about your big goals, write those down and then start to think about monthly, weekly, and daily mini goals that you can do to really set yourself up for success. And you can start to see, small micro goals as being the way to accomplish those larger goals that we sometimes think are so, short term. They're really not. So you also want to think about triggers. So triggers are one of the first things that you need to identify when you think about habits. And so if you know that getting a stressful email is going to make you want to go to the break room and get a snack, then you need to have a new ritual of, if you get a stressful email, instead of immediately getting up and going and grabbing a sweet treat or a piece of candy, that you close your browser and that you take some deep breaths. Maybe you do a 2 or 3 minute meditation. Maybe you walk around your hall, do a lap around your hall in your building, something like that. If you're working from home, maybe you go outside and take a lap around your neighborhood. Do something in replacement so that you're not really relying on the old habit. And if you're not as self-aware about some of those habits, or maybe you think you might have more than you even realize, take a few days to track the habits that you have. So, if you're trying to cut out caffeine or coffee, do you, tend to go and get that at lunchtime or on your way to work or on your way home from work? Look at how those things happen over a week, because in a week's time, you probably are going to have all of the triggers that you would typically have in a given year. And so start to jot those down and start to decide, okay, instead of stopping and getting coffee, or a soft drink on my way home from work, I'm going to start getting something where I can just fix it before I leave. So for me, a habit that I had for a long time was to leave work, wherever work was, right? To leave work, especially when I worked as a nurse at the hospital, I would stop at my favorite store on the way home and I would get a big Mountain Dew, the largest size they had. And it was delicious and it was carbonated and it was cold and it had amazing ice. And I would drink it on the way home as my stress reliever. And I would drink half of it before I even got home, you know, in just a few minutes. And it was such a release of stress for me. And it was not helping set me up for success with my health and wellness and my energy levels. And so for me, one of the things I had to do is I had to recognize that that was a habit that I had gotten into, that I only used to do a couple of times a week, and it became an everyday habit. And so I had to choose a new way to go home because I didn't want to pass by that fast food restaurant with my favorite drink, because my car would inevitably end up in the drive-through without me realizing it. And so I had to take a new way home, and I had to start bringing something to drink on my way home, because drinking, you know, something with caffeine on my way home had become my habit, and I knew I was going to miss that. So I actually switched to coffee. And so I baby stepped it. I didn't go cold turkey. So I started going to my favorite coffee shop every day and getting a small coffee and drinking it on the way home. And then eventually weaned myself down to, I just did that once a week, and I started taking other drinks so that I had that drink on the way home. You know, it was saved for that ride home. And those were ways that I could really work around that. And so it's been about 7 years since I've had Mountain Dew. And for me to say that to you, it is really remarkable, because I grew up on Mountain Dew. That's something that I drank every day. And at my highest usage of Mountain Dew, that's how I talk about it, because it truly was an addiction. I was drinking 6 or 7 Mountain Dews a day. And so for me to not have had that in 7 years is something that 7 years ago I could not have fathomed. And so it's really about replacing your habits. Now I don't have coffee every day on my way home. My budget is really thankful for that. And, you know, I have a lot of natural energy because I'm drinking water more. But part of my habit is that I have water and I have drink packets, so that I always still am doing that same habit I established a long time ago, you know, 17 or 18 years ago, of drinking something on the way home from work. Now I do it in a really healthy way. It's healthy for my body, it's healthy for my budget, and I don't have to think about it anymore. So I just wanted to give you that example of how you can start to think about making those kinds of changes for yourselves. So, you know, where does your habit or your behavior happen? For me, that one was in the car on the way home. And what time of day? It was usually between 3 and 5. So, you know, a time where your cortisol levels are dropping, your energy levels are dropping, and you kind of naturally want something to kind of give you a boost anyway. So that was, you know, that was really a part of the process, right? How did it make you feel when it happened? You know, I would feel good in the moment and then I'd feel guilty later. That's true for a lot of us. And then were other people involved? Not really. But, you know, maybe there are. Maybe it's a celebration and your family is involved or your coworkers are involved. And then does it happen right before or after anything else? So for me, it happened right before or right when I was going home. So those are some things that you can think about in terms of your triggers. A sweet tea every day at lunch. Yes. One of my coworkers and I were just talking about that she gets a sweet tea at lunch too. We do like our sweets sometimes. So identifying your triggers, so important to making some lasting changes. All right. So 7 steps to cultivate habit change. If you can really take a moment and think about what is it that you're wanting to achieve, not just what your goal is. So not just that you want to lose 50 pounds, but when you lose those 50 pounds, what is that going to mean for you? Is it going to mean that you can run more? Is it going to mean that you can play with your kids or grandkids more? Is it going to mean that you have more time and energy available for your spouse or partner or your friends? Is it going to mean that you feel really proud of yourself, that you feel accomplished? Is it going to mean that you feel happier, that you have more self-esteem? That's what I mean by intention. What is that goal going to do for you in terms of your emotions and your feelings? And then I want you to write down your actual goal that you have for your habit change. So, maybe it's that you need to start exercising a few times a week. Usually we say 3 to 5 times a week, 30 to 45 minutes with cardio and strength training. So maybe, part of your health and wellness journey is that you start to exercise. That could be something that you write down as your habit change goal, that you're going to be more active. And being more active is going to give you the energy and, kind of the discipline to do other things that are important in your life. And then I want you to think about listing the reason for making that change. So, you kind of talked about it in your intention of the emotions you're going to feel, why it's important to you. So this is going to be a really specific reason for the habit change. For me, my habit changes were about my children. I wanted to be able to be more present and more engaged and more energetic for them. So I wrote down that very statement. And that helped me be accountable. And then I want you to identify some possible obstacles or challenges. For me, just seeing the restaurant when I was going to, stop drinking Mountain Dew, just seeing that iconic, color scheme and, kind of signage out front made me want to pull my cart into the drive-thru. So I knew, as extreme as it sounds, that I had to take a different route home. And it wasn't a convenient different route home, but I had to do it or I wasn't going to be successful. So identify those obstacles and challenges, and then you're going to create a plan to overcome those. And so for me, it was not putting blinders on and, kind of driving past it. I tried that for a week and it did not work. And so I had to come up with something a little more dramatic. And I had to replace some of that bad habit with something else. So I also had to seek accountability. So all of us are hardwired a little differently, and some of you need, you can guess, yes, the best Mountain Dew in town. So you can really need more accountability than others, right? Like for me, I need accountability because I am what's called an obliger. So if you don't know your tendency, Gretchen Rubin has a book called The Four Tendencies, and she has a lot of free information online that you can, access without purchasing the book unless you just want to do a deep dive. But she has a free quiz, and there's 4 tendencies of how you're kind of hardwired for being motivated. And for me, I am an obliger. So external accountability, if you ask me to do something, I will drop everything and run and help you. But if it's only important to me, which is my health and wellness, if that's only really important to me, I will do everything else for everyone else first, and then I'll focus on me. And so the tendencies are about how you meet internal versus external, expectations and how you manage those. So for someone who's an obliger, we really do need an accountability partner because we're not going to let our friend down who we said we'd meet at the gym or at the park to walk. But we would be okay with letting ourselves down. We would not meet ourselves, in that goal, but we're not going to do that to our friend. And so having someone to regularly check in with is so important. So I told everyone that I knew, because I always had my cup with me. Everyone always knew that that's what I would drink. That's what people would bring me as a treat, I would say, I don't do that anymore. So I wouldn't say I'm trying to quit Mountain Dew. I would just emphatically say, even though it was very painful for me to say it, I would say, I no longer drink Mountain Dew. I'm not a Mountain Dew drinker. And it was not very believable in the beginning to me or to others. But it helped me because people stopped bringing me Mountain Dew. We stopped eating where they had Mountain Dew. So we didn't even go to restaurants where they had Mountain Dew. If we did, then I would get my family to order my food and my drink for me. And I know that sounds extreme, but I had to do that to stop that relationship, because if someone asked me, out of habit, I would say, I want a Mountain Dew, please. And so I had to delegate that for a while. So that is what helps with accountability. Even if you are pretty internally motivated and meet those internal expectations, when you're overcoming a habit, you still may need extra help. And then once you've got your plan in place and your accountability in place, then you just follow the plan. And a lot of us, and myself included, we like to make a plan, but then we never actually implement the plan and we never actually follow the plan. And if we do try to follow the plan, a lot of times we don't track what we're doing and we don't evaluate our progress. And so if we're not following through, then, eventually we're going to get off track because, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. That's the saying, right? And so you've kind of got to have an end destination in mind. It may change and that's fine, but you've got to have kind of this target that you're aiming for, or you're not going to meet those goals. And then you've got to maintain your motivation as much as you can, but even more than motivation, you've got to maintain that discipline and that structure and that routine that's going to support those good habits. All right. So setting your intention, you want it to be something less vague than the one that I listed here for you. So I put, I will be the best version of myself by my next birthday. And we say things like that all the time. I do too. I catch myself saying that. But how are you going to measure that? And what does that mean? Because the best version of myself today might change from a year from now. And it certainly will probably be different than what your best version of yourself is. And so you want to do something, along the lines of SMART goals where you have something that's really specific and measurable. And the important part of setting an intention, which is something we don't often do, is going back to this Wayne Dyer quote, which is our intention creates our reality. And so when we opened the presentation, we talked about, beliefs and actions and mindsets and thought and all of that. Really, we do create our reality through the things that we think, the things that we say, and kind of how we set the intention for our lives. And so for me, the best version of myself by my next birthday was a goal that I set a few years ago because I wanted to reach a certain, weight range and fitness level that I hadn't achieved yet. And I set that to be this birthday that's coming up next week. I said by my 35th birthday, I want to have achieved, and I made it very specific. And I gave several parameters so that I would know whether I was successful. I had several mini goals so that if I didn't make all of them or only made one of them, I would still feel successful. And so I said by, February 12th, 2021, this is my deadline. And so it's very timely that this presentation is coming up because this kind of work is what inspired me to set those kinds of goals. So when you think about the long-term goal, don't just think about what you want to achieve, like I said, but think about how you want to feel when you achieve it, because that's really what we're working toward. And so then the short-term goals, again, going back to what I said, monthly or weekly goals, what's going to move the needle forward for you? If you, want to have a weight loss goal, it's going to be things like getting in your steps and drinking water and making sure you're having plenty of fruits and vegetables. So then daily, you're going to have to make sure that you're tracking that water and that food intake and that you're moving your body, even if it's not formal exercise. It's resting, it's sleeping, it's all of those basic things. So you have to make sure that you really schedule those things out. So you map it out. You schedule it in your day, your week, and your month. If you don't schedule it, you're probably not going to accomplish it. So the things that get done, like our hair appointments, our dentist appointments, our work meetings, if you have children, your kids' sports and things, the reason those things get done, even though you're really busy, is because there is a date and a time associated. You know that, like, for example, for me, my daughters are going to be in ballet at 4 o'clock on Monday afternoon. And they get to ballet at 4 o'clock on Monday afternoon because that's when the class meets. But if I didn't, schedule that, if there was no schedule and I just said, I really want my girls to learn ballet, and there was never a class and a time and a date associated, they probably would never learn ballet because it wasn't built into our routine. So assign a date and a time. Make that appointment with yourself for, rest, for self-care, for your goals. And then when someone asks you, hey, can you go and do this or can you go and do that? Really evaluate whether you want to break that appointment with yourself, because you do have an appointment and it's with you to work on your goals. And then you want to make sure that you check in. So there are going to be days where you don't drink enough water. There are going to be days where you don't meet your, goals with your, steps, or that you don't exercise. Life is going to happen. But the thing that you need to do is that you need to just pick it back up. Then the next time that you have the opportunity, the next meal where you can make a better choice, the next 30 minutes where you can go and move your body. You just do the next right thing as soon as you have time available. And you make that time if you're consistently telling yourself that there is no time for that. And then you just rinse and repeat that as often as you need to meet the goals that you've set for yourselves. So this is a worksheet that we're going to send out to y'all so that you can, use this as a template. You can print off as many copies as you want. You can map out as many goals as you want on here. But I think it's really important for you to have the ability to really sit down with this sheet and think about what goal you want to focus on. And I would just pick one to start. So I've got one mapped out for you. So a really common goal is to lose 10% of your body weight. I always make goals be in 90-day increments. So 3-month goals is really an important part of, mapping out goals that are going to be sustainable, because it's not going to happen overnight. But if you make it 6 months or a year, you can get really disconnected from that goal and the accountability. So I might put that my accountability partner is my friend Catherine, or my friend Leisha. Both of those ladies are really good about holding me accountable to my goals. And so just sending them a text message and saying, hey, I'm working on this goal. Will you check on me next week and see how I did, And for me, that's great, because that's going to motivate me, and encourage me to actually take action. So I always set in a positive affirmation around that goal. So, you're not going to hate your body or your life into, somehow being better. That's not how it works. You have to really love yourself to wellness and health, and you have to love yourself well into the kind of life that you want. And so saying nice things about yourself is the very start of that. I nourish my body and I give it rest. And is that always true? No, it's not always true, but I'm going to say it as if it is true, because if I don't believe it and I don't say it, it isn't going to be true. And so in the 1 through 10 box right here, I just list out some things that I would need to do to accomplish my goal of this 10% of my body weight loss. So I would need to know what my weight is. And some of us don't know, and that's okay. There have been times where I didn't know what my weight was because I didn't want to step on a scale. So you've got to know where you're starting from. It's like putting in an address for a GPS. If you don't know where you are and you don't know where you're going, you're not going to be able to use the GPS to get you anywhere. And so you've got to have that data, right? Just treat it as data. It's just numbers. So step on the scale and see what you weigh. And then that's going to help you calculate, okay, what would 10% of my body weight be? And then, you might want to walk. You might want to have a new meal plan. You might want to join a gym. Like all of these wonderful things, right? Well, pick the top 4 of those to be your mini goals. And I didn't put join a gym on the top 4 because you want to really establish a good routine before you start spending a lot of money on a gym. And that's what people do on January 1st. They join a gym and they never go back after January. And then they tell themselves, well, I've never kept that promise. So I'm not going to ever be healthy. So start small. Don't buy anything. Don't sign up for anything. Just use what you have, right? You can walk, hopefully, in your neighborhood. Walk, use some good, comfortable shoes, make sure you're safe, but, start small. walking with a friend, walking with a neighbor, socially distanced, physically distanced. Those are all great things. Walking with your kids or your spouse or your partner. And then deciding on cooking, some healthier versions of your favorite foods. Those are all things that you can do for relatively free or not more than what you're doing now to start your health and wellness journey. And then you want to know how you're going to actually measure those. So track everything. This could be scrap paper that you use. It could be an inexpensive journal. It could be a really pretty journal. It doesn't matter, but just, find a way to track that. It could even be the notes app on your phone. Certainly you can start walking and track it in your move spring. That's a great way to do it. And then, think about how you're going to plan and prep. So, you might have a meal planner that you print out. There's tons of free options for that. And then next, you're going to really start to think about your timeline. So we said we wanted to do this by May 1st. So our deadline for this first goal is May 1st. So today is going to be when we step on the scale. Like that's the number one thing we decided we needed to do. And I always put the start date as today. You never want to put it off into the future. Always start today, always start now. And then, give yourself a goal that you want to do by 2 weeks and by a month and by 2 months. And then lastly, you're going to step on the scale again at 3 months. If this is your goal weight, that this is what you're wanting to measure, then that's how you're going to measure it. If it's something like, strength training, or maybe it's being more productive or organized at home or work, or, maybe it's that you're, building good, relationships in community while, the pandemic is preventing some of those things. Maybe in 3 months you're sitting down to look at your calendar to see how often you reached out with a text message or a phone call. So again, I want you to be, really comfortable using this sheet to track all of your goals and set your goals. And certainly we should have goals beyond just, weight loss and fitness and health. But it's just an easy way to kind of talk through the sheet. And then I love applying Coach Nick Saban's process. He talks about the process, and he has a process for how he, helps really develop his football players. And the process that he talks about is really about habit change and mindset. And so one of his quotes is to focus on the process of what it takes to be successful. And what it takes to be successful is making these really small changes that add up to a big result. And so that's what I would encourage you to do with this worksheet. So preparing for success, really, I want to just emphasize that you need to listen to yourselves. You're the expert of your life and your body and what you need. And so, take time to really sit and listen and decide what it is that you need in this season of life. Try to, really know your triggers and avoid those if possible. Changing your environment, changing your route on your way home from work, whatever you need to do. Try to choose something that's going to replace the unhealthier habit. Really visualize yourself changing, and visualize yourself at the end point of your goal. What are you going to look like? What are you going to feel like? How are you going to, carry yourself? Really imagine what that's going to be like for you when you reach the goals you set. Try to really monitor your negative self-talk, because we say negative things all the time to ourselves and our brains are listening. So we want to really monitor that and filter that. Start small. Remember that setbacks are a part of the journey. That's okay. That means you're trying. Try to remember that it takes time to change, and reward yourself along the way, and try to do that with things that, don't cost a lot of money and that are non-food rewards. And then also just remember to practice self-care and mindfulness. Take time to really rest your brain and your body. You also want to remember to be persistent, because, goals and changes don't happen overnight, and new habits usually take around 66 days to 90 days to form. So, we often think about 21 days to a new goal. That's what we, used to say would it take, 3 weeks and you're going to be a new you. But we know from, newer research that it's really more like 2 to 3 months for you to really start to get those ingrained habits. And then I wanted to teach you this positive reframing technique as we wrap up. So often we talk about having a positive mindset and we just tell you to think more positively. And that's really not how our brains work. Our brains are pretty much on default or automatic mode a lot of the time. And what we put in our brains, what we consume every day is what usually comes out, right? The old saying of, why did you spill the coffee? It was because the coffee was what was in your cup. So, whatever we're putting into ourselves is what comes out sometimes. And so, when we think about using positive reframing, our circumstances is that we're trying to work, or we're trying to go to school, or we're trying to parent, or we're trying to, create new habits, whatever the fill in the blank is for you, while we're in the middle of a pandemic, and that's hard. And so we tell ourselves, this is so hard. My life is hard. And then when we say that, we feel overwhelmed. And then when we feel overwhelmed, we typically don't take action, right? We go and get coffee, we hit the drive-through, we scroll social media, we watch Netflix, and we don't do anything. And then the result is that our life is stressful. So we can't always change our circumstances. Usually we can't, but we can change how we think about our circumstances. And so a new, more helpful thought would be, I'm strong, I'm capable, I can change things if I want. And then we start to really think about how we can positively change that thought, right? So this didn't change the fact that we're trying to work or do life or parent or change our habits in the middle of a pandemic. That didn't change. But instead of thinking, my life is so hard, that might pop in. And as soon as it pops in, my life is so hard, you're like, you know what? Okay, I thought that, but I am strong and I am capable and I can change things. So this is not the absent of the more negative thought. It's just that you're going to take it a step further and say, but you know what? I don't have to believe that. This is what I believe. And then you're automatically going to feel a little more hopeful, a little more optimistic. When you feel that way, you tend to start to make more positive changes and you start to really get to work on your goals. And then things start to change. So your life, it's kind of that self-fulfilling prophecy either way. You start to really see some great results. So there are some free habit trackers online that I think are really great. There are a lot of great apps that you can get as well. This one is from Paper Trail Design. You can just fill in your, habits on the, left side and then mark the days. I think that's a great old school way to do it. That's what I prefer, pen and paper. But there's a lot of great apps as well that you can search for. And then I just want to remind you that finding balance looks different for everyone. So for all of us on this call, we all have different goals, we all have different experiences and different challenges. And so just remember that you have to do what works best for you and to take what resonates from this talk and apply it as best as you can. And just continue to remember that, any progress is better than staying stuck. So I've included some wellness basics here for you, and some other slides on how to really create awareness, how to practice mindfulness, and some practical tools that you can use. But I will tell you that a notebook and a piece of paper, just a plain notebook, works just as well as any tool that you can purchase. So these are not necessary. The self-awareness and putting in the work is what's really necessary. And then some other things like playlists and apps like Headspace and Motivation app and Yoga with Adrienne. These are all great tools. Getting out in nature, having some grounding meditations, all really great tools to help you on your journey. And we'll share all of this with you. And then just to close out, successful people are simply those with successful habits. And so really focus on making small habit change a part of your life and you'll really see progress towards your goals. So we'd love for you to follow us on social media. We have blogs related to the wellness classes that I teach, and then of course, the website, Facebook, and Instagram that we would love for you to follow. Ashley is on the call and she does a phenomenal job of all of the social media management. And then we do offer free health and life coaching to UA employees. So if you're interested in free health or life coaching, you're welcome to reach out at my email address here, and I will be happy to connect you with those resources. So I'm going to look in the chat. Shelly, the slideshow will probably come from Nikki Bush, if not Ashley Bowman. Good question. All right, so just let me know if I need to unmute you or if you want to put a question or comment in the chat, please feel free. Thank you, Lynn. Thanks, Megan. I appreciate that.